The next and final tab in the configuration population tool is setting up your roles. And this is probably the most important tab if you consider the need for resource management an important one for your business. So we're going to talk about roles and how you can break them down by proficiencies should you need to. And we'll also talk about why we don't want titles in the system and how really resource management works. So to do that, let's go over to WorkOtter and take a peek on how supply versus demand of your human resources works so that you can best configure the roles for your organization. I'm over in WorkOtter now, and this is the input form or edit form of a particular single user. So there's an ID, last name, first name, some of the common things that you've already been working on in the other tabs. But down here, we also have a selection of role dash proficiencies in this demo data. So a role is typically a collection of finite skills that altogether allows people to do certain functions within your business. It's usually why you hired someone. So project manager would be a role. Being well organized might be a skill, but the role is project manager. Now, I often caution clients in as strong a terms as I can not to use titles in WorkOtter. The reason is you're trying to figure out, again, if you have enough supply of people in a particular role to meet the demand that the projects are asking for. And so if you put everyone's title in there, you'll have basically 1,000 roles and there's no way to aggregate it or pull it together in a report. So rather than put vice president of or senior director of, we really encourage you to use just a management bucket for all the managers. Oftentimes, and this is a little sad to me, but businesses don't care from a resource management perspective how busy the management staff is anyway, so there's no real purpose in having it broken down much further than that. So now let's talk about roles. So a role, like we said, could be project manager. Now sometimes you need to separate that same role, project manager, into multiple rows of information. And we use the proficiency as a way to kind of take a generic role and break it down by a number of different things. What are those things that you might break it down? So one way to use a proficiency is if you have a stovepiped organization. Let's say you have a group of project managers that report to organization A and a group of project managers that report to organization B. Well, when you tag that role, you kind of need to know which group you're pulling from. So we add a proficiency and we split the row. So there's project management dash org A and project management dash org B. And our reporting is sophisticated enough where you can just remove the org A or role org B and just say, do I have enough project managers? Full stop. So, but the proficiency, one of the ways you do that is to help with that stovepiping situation where not everybody's co-located under one manager. What's another good reason to use a proficiency? Another good reason to use a proficiency is when they're radically different cost bases for that. So like some of our clients have onshore versus offshore resources. And offshore resources might have a significantly lower cost to the company than someone in their local region. So you would then again be able to plan your project using onshore or offshore and get an accurate accounting of what that project might cost. And then those actuals, depending on if you use the right resources, could be radically different, right? So again, that's another good reason to have a breakout of a single role into multiple rows in the spreadsheet you're about to see for proficiency. Are there any other use cases? Another good use case would be if you do work for an external customer and maybe you have different bill rates for a senior consultant versus a junior consultant. The role might be consultant, the proficiency might be senior or junior. Last but not least, another reason you might find in your organization the need to break out a role into multiple rows would be for location. If it's really important for you to identify a project manager in France versus one in the United States, you might then again split out. So you can see here for this person now on the screen, I've got project manager in-house Asia and test coordinator offshore proficient. So those are the roles and proficiencies tied together, glued together if you will. and they can't be separated once you kind of glue them together. And for this person, I'm identifying 75% of the time they spend doing this primary role and 25% they spend doing this secondary role. This just gives you a little more resolution for people that wear multiple hats. Okay? So hopefully that gives you some ideas. And another place you can really see this is if we go into a project and we go to the team and the roles. Notice how each person's assigned one or more roles for this project, and you also have generic roles and proficiencies here as well. And when we go to add people or roles and proficiencies, which we often do, you have all sorts of filtering capabilities where you can filter just on the role, project manager, or the role and the proficiency, like I've done here. So it just gives you that flexibility to just roll it up just to the role, or break it down by proficiency. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Now let's go over to the data and see how it gets set up within WorkOtter. Here is the tab now for roles, and what we often recommend as people get started, especially if they don't have any experience with resource management, is to just not break it down by proficiency. If that's not an important attribute for you, even though we just discussed it, you can definitely just have like a list of roles in here, like you're seeing, and have a star next to it, which means you're not interested in breaking it down by proficiency. If you do need to break it down by proficiency, in one of the ways we've talked about, notice here I've got the same role on two different rows, and I could have this be, for example, org A versus org B, meaning this role, electrical engineer, has a team in org A and in org B. Okay, and notice how we're putting it all together. So what are some of the other features in this spreadsheet? Well, one of the things you can do is set up your cost and bill rates. So unless you have external clients and you're actually, doing profit and loss type billing, you don't have to worry about column D. Column E is the blended rate that will be used in WorkOtter. So if you plan a task with 10 hours and it's $50 an hour, then you'll see a labor cost of $500. Okay. Now, I use this proficiency to say org A. Well, I need to make sure that maps to the organization tab. So I want to actually pick whatever that org is. Similarly, I can pick a location. And then, of course, we want to make active equal yes. Now, there's a couple kind of extra roles in here I would highly recommend you keep or put into your configuration. One is like steering committee member, things that you identify perhaps in your project charter that you want to then put someone in that role on the project. Even though they might not enter any time or really have any responsibilities, they will get email notifications. They'll show up on reports as being the sponsor or steering committee member or those types of things. So add those in even though you're not really using them for a resource management purpose. The other thing I'd say is you can't remove, the project manager is a protected one, so you can't remove that one. So that's a little bit on setting up roles and proficiencies. And if this is still not quite cemented in your head how to best lay this out, you may definitely reach out to your configuration specialist, the person at WorkOtter in charge of your success, and they'll have some additional information and guidelines or might ask you additional questions to help you kind of figure this out.